I've been standing on this porch since before I can remember, watching the sun crawl over those stubborn Texas hills that stretch across my family's land. 500 acres, rough, raw, and real. My granddaddy bought this place back in 1943, with nothing but grit and a whole lot of heart. It's not just dirt and grass, it's my history, my roots, and the sweat of every Briggs before me. My daddy worked this land, my granddaddy before him, and now it's on me to keep it alive. Some days that weight feels like a burden, but mostly, it's pride. This ranch is who I am. Lately, something's been different. Just across the fence line, where wild grasses used to dance, there's now a row of brand new houses, Pinewood Estates they call it. Gleaming mailboxes, manicured lawns, and an HOA that polices grass height like it's the law of the land. Change is never easy, especially when it pushes so close to what you love. Then there's Tina Mulallery. The first time I met her, I was loading feed sacks outside the barn, sweat dripping down my back. She showed up in that worn red sweater, clipboard in hand, looking like she owned the place even though she'd only lived here a couple of years. Her eyes had that sharp sparkle, like she thought she was some kind of sheriff enforcing community rules. "Mr. Briggs," she said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Tina, president of the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association. I wanted to talk about some concerns our residents have." She paused, as if waiting for me to say something. "About the ranch operation." I wiped my hands on my jeans, eyeing her clipboard. "Concerns?" I asked, voice steady. "Like what?" She tilted her head, all polite sweetness. "The noise, the smells from the cattle. Some families are worried about the impact on their kids' health and property values." I laughed, low and tired. "Ma'am, this here is the smell of hard work and tax money that built this town. My granddaddy worked this land long before those houses sprouted up." She scribbled something, unfazed. "We just want to make sure everyone's living comfortably. You understand, community standards and all." Something about the way she said it, like she already saw me as the problem, set my nerves on edge. This wasn't about standards. It was about control. And I could feel it settling in deep. This fight was bigger than me, bigger than cattle and fences. It was about holding on to the legacy my family built, and no young HOA president was going to drive me off my own land. That day, I realized I wasn't just a rancher anymore. I was a guardian of history, and I'd have to fight like hell to keep it. The morning I found that letter in my mailbox, my stomach dropped like a rock. It was on official Pinewood Estates HOA letterhead, all fancy fonts and legal jargon that made my head spin. "Dear Mr. Briggs," it started. "Your livestock operation is in violation of noise ordinances and environmental regulations, causing negative impact on surrounding residential properties." Then it went on about community wellness standards and immediate mitigation required. And if I didn't comply, legal action would follow. I crumpled the paper and let out a bitter laugh. Noise ordinances? Environmental regs? Since when? I muttered to myself. This ranch has been here for generations, long before any of these houses popped up. Later that day, I met Derek Nash at the general store. He's the HOA treasurer, always nervous, like he'd rather be anywhere else. I waved the letter at him. "You seen this?" He glanced at it, hands shaking a little. "Yeah, Tina's pushing hard. Says it's about protecting the community." "Protecting the community?" I scoffed. "She's trying to run me off my land." Carol Jenkins was nearby, scribbling notes for the HOA. I caught her eye. "Carol, you really think this is right?" She hesitated, voice low. "I don't know. Tina's got everyone scared. I'm doing my job." I could see it in her eyes, the doubt, the unease. She wasn't the enemy, but she was caught in the middle. The strangest things started happening over the next few days. Cars slowed down by my fence line, strangers with clipboards snapping pictures of my barns, measuring fences. One morning, Lois Whitaker, my neighbor for 40 years, told me she saw people walking the property line, writing things down like they were investigators. I confronted one of them outside the feed store. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Just doing a community survey," the woman replied, clipboard held tight. "Survey for what?" "Checking on local environmental impact," she said, avoiding my eyes. I didn't buy it. Felt like harassment dressed up in paperwork. That's when I realized Tina wasn't just sending letters or organizing meetings. She was trying to build a case. A paper trail to squeeze me out. And all I wanted was to work my land in peace. I went home, the sun setting low, and thought, this isn't neighborly talk anymore. This is war. And it's just getting started. I didn't know where to start, so I went straight to the source, my granddaddy's old desk. That roll top had been sitting in the corner of the barn office for years, stuffed with folders, papers, and maps. I pulled out dusty boxes labeled property, taxes, and correspondence, then settled in at the kitchen table with a strong cup of coffee. Flipping through the faded documents, I found something that stopped me cold, a hand-drawn map, marked in my grandfather's careful handwriting. It showed 550 acres, not 500 like I always thought we owned. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost track of 50 acres, and suddenly, it felt like the first clue in a much bigger puzzle. I pulled out letters between my granddaddy and county officials, dating back decades. One from 1962 talked about selling 25 acres for a road expansion, but that deal fell through. Another, from 1985, confirmed the sale of 50 acres for residential development, but it came with clear language: residential use must accommodate continued agricultural operations on adjacent land. I frowned, reading the fine print again. That sounded like my ranch, not the new houses. Had the HOA missed something? Or worse, did they know and were just ignoring it? Lois Whitaker stopped by while I was still buried in papers. She's been my neighbor longer than I've been alive, solid as a rock, with a heart as wide as the prairie. "You digging up old ghosts, Colton?" she asked, eyeing the maps. "Feels more like digging up my own damn future," I replied. Found out there's more land than I thought, and some of it never got sold the way I figured. Makes me wonder if Tina's got her facts straight. Lois crossed her arms, looking serious. "Watch yourself with those HOA folks. They don't play fair, and they're real good at twisting things to their favor." "I'm starting to see that," I said. "But I've got something real here: papers, maps, letters. It's more than hearsay now." She gave me a firm nod. "You gotta hold on to that. When they come knocking, you need every scrap of proof you can find." That night, sitting with the map spread across my kitchen table, hope flickered in me. Maybe I wasn't just fighting a losing battle. Maybe I had the truth on my side. Still, I couldn't shake the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. How deep did this mess go? How many lies were tangled in all these papers? And how much was I willing to fight to set it right? I leaned back in my chair, fingers tracing the edges of the old survey. The land felt alive beneath my hands, whispering stories of years gone by, and demanding I listen. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going down without a fight. That morning, I found another letter waiting for me. This one wasn't from the HOA, it came from a lawyer named Lauren Beckett. Sharp, professional-looking envelope. I could feel the cold weight of it before I even opened it. "Mr. Briggs," it began, "you are hereby ordered to cease all livestock operations on your property immediately pending an environmental review. Failure to comply will result in legal action." The letter was full of fancy legal terms, but the message was clear: shut it down or face court. I slammed the door behind me, anger bubbling hot under my skin. They're not just playing dirty, they're playing for keeps, I muttered. I needed help, fast. Called Jim Crawford, an old friend and lawyer with more years fighting for ranchers than I care to count. His voice was calm on the phone, steady as a rock. Colton, I've seen this kind of thing before, Jim said. They'll use every trick to squeeze you out. But with the right papers and patience, we can push back. Relief washed over me, but so did the weight of knowing this wasn't going to be easy. In the days that followed, Tina's campaign spread like wildfire. Flyers appeared on windshields, emails flooded inboxes, and I heard whispers from neighbors who'd signed a petition demanding the county rezone my ranch land as residential. 31 out of 47 families, Lois told me, shaking her head. That's a lot. I couldn't help but feel the sting. People I'd waved to, shared stories with, were turning against me. They don't know the whole story, I told Lois, though even I wondered if I could convince them. One afternoon, I ran into Carol Jenkins outside the community center. She looked worn, like carrying secrets heavier than her job title. Carol, I said gently, do you really believe all this is right? The letters, the petitions. She bit her lip, eyes downcast. Tina's got away with people, Colton. Scares em into thinking you're the problem. That's not the truth, I said. This ranch has been here longer than that whole neighborhood. I know, she whispered. But fear's a powerful thing. Jim showed up a week later, paperwork in hand. We're going to need every bit of evidence, Colton. Surveys, ownership documents, anything that proves this land's yours, and that the HOA's claims don't hold water. I nodded, feeling the weight of the fight ahead pressing down, but Jim's steady presence kept me grounded. That night, I stood looking out over the ranch. The shadows of those new houses felt like a wall closing in. But I clenched my fists, voice low and firm. They think they can push me off my land? Not a chance. The legal web was tightening, but I wasn't caught yet. This was just the start. One morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop, texts, calls, social media alerts. Tina had launched a full-blown campaign online, painting my ranch like it was some toxic nightmare. Health hazard next door, one post read. Another said, protect our children from ranch pollution. Photos she'd taken, close-ups of cattle, barns, even my trucks, twisted to look like danger signs. I felt like the whole neighborhood had turned into a courtroom jury, and I was the accused. I confronted Carol Jenkins at the grocery store, her eyes darting around like she was hiding something. Carol, why are you letting this happen? This isn't the ranch I know. She bit her lip, voice low. I'm torn, Colton. Tina's convincing, and folks are scared. But something feels off. I've been writing down what she says, and some of it doesn't add up. Then why not say something? I pressed. She sighed. I'm scared. Tina's got a way of making people believe her, even when she's wrong. But I promise, I'm with you. Just trying to figure out how to help without making things worse. Her words gave me some hope, but the isolation was real. Neighbors who used to wave now barely looked my way. Invitations to community events stopped coming. One evening, I found my gate spray-painted with warnings, dangerous ranch, and keep out. Whoever did it wanted me gone. That night, anger boiled inside me. They think they can scare me off. I whispered into the dark. They don't know who they're messing with. But beneath that anger, something else grew, a fierce determination. I wasn't just fighting for land. I was fighting for my family's legacy, for the truth. The next morning, I walked to the barn, greeted by silence where there used to be neighborly chatter. The ranch felt lonelier than ever, but I stood tall. Carol said she's got my back, I told myself. That's enough for now. Later, I called Jim Crawford. They're running me out with lies and fear, I said. What's next? Jim's voice was steady. You keep fighting, Colton. Lies only last so long when you've got the truth on your side. I hung up, feeling the weight but also the fire. This wasn't just a land dispute anymore, it was a battle for respect, for survival. I wasn't about to let Tina and her followers win. Not on my watch. Jim sat across from me in my kitchen, stacks of papers spread out between us. Colton, these documents? They're solid. He pointed to a county survey with clear boundary lines, signed HOA disclosures, and property deeds all lined up like armor against Tina's attacks. I leaned in, heart pounding. You really think this will hold up? Jim nodded, rubbing his chin. Absolutely. They can't ignore official county records. And these HOA forms? Those signatures prove the community knew about your ranch when they moved in. No hidden surprises. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. So, this fight's not just me against the world. No, it's you with facts and law on your side, Jim said with a small smile. Just then, my phone rang. It was Inspector Rodriguez, the county health guy Jim recommended. I'm at your ranch, Colton. I want to do a full inspection to address those complaints. The next morning, I watched him walk the property with a clipboard, asking questions, checking feed storage, water sources, everything. For hours he poked and prodded, talked to my crew, and looked over every inch. When he finally approached me, his expression was serious but not harsh. Colton, I've been inspecting agricultural operations for over a decade. Your ranch is cleaner and better maintained than most commercial feedlots I've seen. I blinked, surprised. So, the complaints. Baseless. No violations. No environmental concerns. If anything, you're a model operation. That news hit me like a shot of adrenaline. I called Jim right away. The inspector cleared me. This should put an end to Tina's scare tactics. Jim chuckled. It'll be harder for her to spin that one. But don't get too comfortable yet. I wasn't comfortable, but I was hopeful. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the fight was turning in my favor. Later that day, I sent copies of the inspection report and all the gathered evidence to neighbors who'd signed Tina's petition. I included a note: this ranch has been part of this community long before any of us moved here. Let's get the facts straight. That night, Carol Jenkins called me quietly. Colton, I showed those papers to a few folks. Some are starting to question Tina's story. That's good to hear, I replied. It's hard seeing friends turn away, but truth has a way of shining through. She hesitated, then added, keep holding on. You're not alone. Those words settled in me like a lifeline. I looked out over the ranch at sunset, the land glowing gold. The fight was far from over, but armed with truth and allies, I wasn't facing it blindly anymore. I whispered, we're just getting started. When Tina called that emergency HOA meeting, I knew it wasn't going to be a friendly neighborhood chat. She wanted to rally the troops, paint me as the villain once more. I decided I wasn't going to sit back and watch it happen. Walking into the community center, I could feel every eye on me. Tina stood at the front, red sweater sharp as ever, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Thank you all for coming, she said, voice dripping with confidence. We've all been patient, but the health concerns around the Briggs Ranch can no longer be ignored. Murmurs filled the room. I cleared my throat and stepped forward, holding up a thick folder. I'm Colton Briggs. I know there's been a lot said about my family's ranch, and I want to set the record straight. I laid out the county health inspection report first. Inspector Rodriguez cleared my operation. No violations, no risks. The room grew quiet. Next, I spread the survey maps on the table, pointing to boundary lines. These are official county documents showing exactly where my land ends, and where your development begins. I saw Tina's face tighten. She glanced at the crowd, trying to regain control. Carol Jenkins stood up, voice shaky but clear. I need to say something. I've been recording minutes, attending meetings where misinformation was spread. I realize now I was part of enabling false claims. Gasps echoed. Carol's resignation as HOA secretary was a blow to Tina's credibility. One by one, neighbors started speaking, some admitting they'd been misled, others withdrawing their signatures from Tina's petition. A man near the back said, I moved here knowing about the ranch. Never thought it was a threat. Another voice chimed in, this meeting's opened my eyes. We need facts, not fear. Tina's grip on the room slipped. She tried to speak, but her words felt hollow. When the meeting ended, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Where tension once ruled, now there was confusion and doubt. Outside, Carol approached me. Colton, I'm sorry. I want to help fix this mess. I nodded. We'll get through it. Together. Walking back to my truck, I felt a cautious triumph. This wasn't the end, but the tide was turning. I whispered to myself, you thought you had me cornered, Tina. But this ranch has fought tougher storms. The fight wasn't over, but the showdown had begun, and I wasn't backing down. Jim said, you need a private investigator, Colton. Someone to dig into Tina's past, see if there's more to this than what we're facing now. I wasn't sure at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew Jim was right. So, I hired Sarah Martinez, a local PI with a reputation for thorough work. A week later, Sarah called me. Colton, I found things you'll want to hear. I sat on my porch, heart pounding. What kind of things? Harassment complaints from 2 previous HOAs where Tina lived. Lawsuits, petitions against her. One case involved her falsely reporting an elderly man for having backyard chickens. I frowned. That's the same pattern she's using against you. There's more, Sarah said. She's been banned from HOA leadership in one neighborhood for misusing funds and filing false reports. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and vindication. No wonder she's so desperate here. Sarah went on, her mortgage application listed a job she doesn't have, and her income's half of what she claimed. She's behind on payments and juggling multi-level marketing gigs to get by. I ran a hand through my hair. So she's trying to cover it all up with this campaign against me. Exactly, Sarah said. I recommend keeping this quiet for now, but when the time's right, this will turn the tables. That night, I stared at the ranch under the moonlight. Tina's mask was slipping, and soon everyone would see who she really was. A few days later, Tina called an emergency HOA meeting, trying to control the narrative again. But this time, her voice sounded strained. I caught neighbors whispering, glancing her way with doubt. Tina's confident smile faded when Carol Jenkins stood up, this time with firm words. Enough lies, Carol said. We need truth and transparency. Tina's desperation grew visible, fidgeting, biting her lip, unable to maintain her usual composure. I felt satisfaction but kept my guard up. This fight wasn't over, it was evolving. That evening, I spoke with Jim. Sarah's findings change everything. Tina's story is falling apart. Jim nodded. Justice is slow, but it's coming. I looked out over the land my family had fought to keep. They thought they could bully me into submission. I clenched my fists. But they didn't count on me turning the tables. The scales of justice were tipping, and for the first time in months, hope burned bright. I whispered, this ranch will stand. And so will I. One morning, my lawyer, Jim, called with news. Colton, Tina's lawyer sent another letter, full of threats and accusations. But it's baseless. We're responding with facts and legal precedent. I felt a flicker of relief but kept my guard up. She's desperate, isn't she? Desperate and cornered, Jim replied. We're holding the line. Then came word of a state investigation into the HOA's finances. Turns out Tina had authorized thousands of dollars in payments to lawyers and consultants without board approval. Carol Jenkins called me, voice shaky but hopeful. "Colton, the state's looking into Tina's misuse of funds. It's serious." I shook my head, incredulous. So the same woman trying to drive me off my land was stealing from the community? "That's what it looks like," Carol said. More whispers spread through Pinewood Estates. Neighbors who had once signed petitions against me began to question their stance. Some reached out, apologizing for doubting me. One neighbor said, "Colton, I had no idea about Tina's history or what she's done. We were misled." That felt like a small victory. But Tina's troubles weren't over. Foreclosure notices arrived, and rumors of IRS inquiries surfaced over her unreported income from online sales. Jim advised me, the legal tides are turning fast. Tina's facing possible charges, and the HOA is in turmoil. At the next HOA meeting, the atmosphere was different, tense and uncertain. The board voted to suspend all actions related to the ranch pending a full review. Carol stood before the group, newly elected HOA president, promising transparency and cooperation. "We're here to rebuild trust," she said. I watched from the back, a cautious smile breaking through. This was progress. Later, I spoke with a neighbor who said, "The community feels stronger now. Thanks for standing your ground." That hit me harder than any victory. It wasn't just about the land anymore, it was about restoring faith and unity. I thought about everything we'd been through, the threats, the lies, the isolation. The cost was high, but so was the reward. That night, I sat on my porch, gazing at the stars over the ranch. The fight wasn't just one with lawyers and papers, it was one with truth and persistence. I whispered, "This land is ours. And no one's taking it." The battle had taken its toll, but I was ready for whatever came next. Because this ranch, and my family's legacy, was worth fighting for every damn day. When the HOA elected new leadership, things started to feel different, calmer, more honest. Carol Jenkins stepped up as president, and she wasn't like Tina. She talked about transparency, cooperation, and rebuilding trust. At the first meeting with Carol in charge, she looked straight at me. "Colton, we want to find common ground. Let's work together to make this right." I nodded, feeling a cautious optimism. "I'm ready." We sat down with neighbors to negotiate a parking and access agreement for Pinewood Estates residents. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair, $300 a month per family, going toward road maintenance and security lighting that helped both the ranch and the neighborhood. One neighbor said, "That sounds reasonable. We all benefit." Another added, "It's good to have clear rules, so there's no confusion." It was a relief to see folks willing to listen, to compromise. Slowly, Pinewood Estates family started visiting the ranch again. Kids who once feared the cattle now helped feed them. Parents asked questions about sustainable farming and animal care. I remember Sarah, a young mother, saying, "I never knew ranch life could be so fascinating. Thanks for letting us be part of it." Those moments made the months of conflict worth it. Carol called me one afternoon. "Colton, the community's healing. People are talking, learning, changing. This is what we hoped for." I smiled, the weight on my shoulders lightening. It's a new chapter. There were still challenges ahead, but the hostility and suspicion were fading. Where there was once fear, now there was respect. I walked the property, watching the sun dip behind the hills, feeling a deep peace. This ranch wasn't just land anymore, it was a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of unity. One evening, a neighbor stopped by with a basket of homemade pies. "For you, Colton. Thanks for standing your ground." I accepted it with gratitude. We're stronger together. That night, I sat on the porch, stars shining bright, and thought about everything we'd been through. The fight had changed me, taught me patience, resilience, and the power of community. I whispered to the quiet land, "We're healing. We're growing." And I knew, whatever came next, we'd face it side by side. Because that's what family and community do. They stand together, through storms and sunshine. And this land? It was home, now and always. Sitting on my porch, watching the last embers of the barbecue fire flicker, I couldn't help but feel a swell of gratitude. This land, the ranch my granddaddy built, my daddy cared for, and now I protect, stood stronger than ever. After all the fights, threats, and sleepless nights, the legacy was safe. I heard laughter and chatter from the families gathered nearby, sharing stories and passing plates. It was the first real celebration in a long time, a sign the community had healed. Carol walked over, wiping her hands on a napkin. "Colton, you did it. This ranch, it's part of all of us now." I nodded, feeling humbled. It took more than me. It took standing firm, and folks willing to see the truth. She smiled. And it took a whole lot of patience. I looked out at the rolling fields, cattle grazing calmly, the fences standing tall. This land teaches you respect. For the soil, the animals, and the hard work it demands. A little boy ran up, eyes wide. "Mr. Briggs, can I help feed the cows tomorrow?" I chuckled, ruffling his hair. "You bet. Just don't let Tina catch you." The crowd laughed, the tension of the past months melting away. I thought back to those early days, when I first got the letter, when strangers measured my fences, when neighbors turned cold. The fight had cost me friendships, time, and peace. But it gave me something more, strength and a deeper understanding of what this ranch meant. "Colton," Jim said, joining us, "you've set a precedent here. A real example of standing your ground." I shook his hand firmly. "Wouldn't have lasted without you." As the stars came out, I felt a quiet pride. Not just for holding on to the land, but for how this fight brought people together. This ranch was no longer just my family's, it was part of the community's heart. I whispered to myself, "This is home. Always has been, always will be." The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every battle. Because some things are bigger than us: family, legacy, the land beneath our feet. And as I watched the neighbors share food, smiles, and stories, I knew we were stronger for it. Together, we'd built more than a ranch, we'd built a future. And that's the greatest victory of all. If there's one thing this fight taught me, it's that knowing your rights isn't optional, it's essential. When they came at me with letters and threats, I had to dig deep into family records, county documents, and every scrap of proof I could find. If I hadn't, this ranch might not be here today. I've learned to document everything, every letter, every conversation, every step taken against me. That paper trail was my shield and my sword. Without it, you're just another voice lost in the noise. And most of all, I learned never to back down when your legacy is on the line. It's not just about land or money, it's about honor, family, and the future you want to protect. I've been asked how I held on through the worst of it. When neighbors turned away, when legal battles felt endless, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. My answer's simple: I stood my ground. Not because I'm the strongest or the loudest, but because this land, this legacy, meant everything. And I refuse to let fear or lies take it away. Now, I want others to hear this and know they're not alone. Whether it's your family's farm, your home, or your community, don't let anyone bully you into silence. Get your facts straight. Keep records. Find allies. Fight with patience and heart. Communities are strongest when they stand together, when truth shines brighter than fear. I think back to those dark days and realize this fight made me better, not just as a rancher, but as a man. It taught me resilience, humility, and the power of persistence. So to anyone listening, facing their own battle, I say this: hold fast to what matters. Stand firm, speak clearly, and don't let anyone tell you your story isn't worth fighting for. Because every inch of land, every memory, every legacy deserves a defender. And if you do, you'll find strength you never knew you had. I look out over my ranch now, peaceful and secure, knowing the fight isn't just won by laws or papers, it's won by people willing to stand tall when it counts. This land, this legacy, and this community, it's worth every battle. So stand your ground. Fight for what's right. Build your future with courage. Because in the end, that's what truly makes us who we are.